Hello and welcome to Breaking the Cycle. My name is Alan Hyde, and tonight we're joined by a licensed social worker in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Her name is Lori Russell-Siemer. Lori, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So Lori and I were just kind of chatting beforehand, and you guys are going to get a chance to hear all about her experience as we get into your private practice and your experience just kind of walking with people in more of kind of what I would, and you can correct me on this, like not just a mental health, but kind of spiritual feeling things out journey. Is that kind of fair?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Yeah.
I like to take a really holistic approach, so mind, body, and spirit, looking at like the whole picture of a person.
Yeah. Very cool. And you started, you had mentioned, we were chatting before, you graduated your undergrad in 1999.
Yeah.
And then got into the field. Did you go straight for the social work route? Is that what kind of started it?
Yeah, so I got my undergraduate degree in 99 in social work. I went straight through to get my master's degree, and I got into an advanced standing program, so I finished in 3 semesters, and then I started the process of licensure. While I was going through the process of the clinical licensure, I actually was working for Child Protective Services.
Yeah.
So that's where I started my career.
Did you find that kind of like, emotionally speaking, really like impacted the direction you went in the field?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say, it's just like a tale of two cities. It was the best of times and the worst of times,
Yeah.
both at the same time. Yeah.
Working with kids, especially when you're being invited into people's homes, is that part of what you were doing with Child Protective Services?
Yeah, at times, definitely. Like I started my career in Williamson County, and so it was more of a rural type setting. And so while I was in the legal department, which means that once the kids get removed from the parents' care, I take over the case, do the case management for the time that they're in foster care, or if they're placed with a relative. Then I transferred to Dallas County, and that was like a whole nother situation. So when I worked in Williamson County, they did not have like night duty workers, so we all had to take turns rotating to be on call. And if I was on call, got a call in the middle of the night, usually law enforcement was involved. Usually it was like an acute, serious problem. Then yes, I would be in a home or in a hospital or on a street somewhere if we found a child roaming with nonverbal and no parents, situations like that.
That, Lori, is brave.
Yeah.
How long did you do that for?
It was wild. I did it for 5 years.
My goodness.
Yeah.
5 years.
And the crazy thing about that too is that I was considered, just with 5 years, like the most tenured. At that point, you're a worker 5, you're just below a supervisor, and so I was getting all of any case that involved a child death, the media, or the investigator was assaulted. That case went to me. So I learned very quickly, and I think I became very adept at crisis intervention. I have a very calming presence and energy, and so I think that helped a lot in working with parents who, obviously their fight, flight, freeze response is totally activated at that point. It's really difficult for them to be away from their children.
Sure.
So, and then it's difficult for the kids also.
Did you find when you were younger that was kind of part of your temperament and part of what guided you into this field, or is that something you found out about yourself?
It was definitely something that I discovered. Like, I went to college to get a criminal justice degree. Like, I was so convinced that I was going to be a detective, and then I got into like an American law enforcement class, and the professor was going around the room asking people what they wanted to do with it, and I was like, detective. And he was like, you have to be a beat cop for like 10 years before you can be a detective. And I was just like, what? I can't see myself, having some of those responsibilities, like wrestling a person, anything like that. And so I ended up going to the advisor and doing an aptitude test, and it was like teacher, nurse, social worker. And I knew the top 2 were not didn't really interest me, but I was like, ooh, what is that, social work? And what I loved about social work was the social justice component to it, and then as well as the diversification. Like, you can work in a hospital, in a school, you can have a private practice, you can be in a group practice. Like, you can, it's very versatile.
Yeah. When did you take the leap into private practice?
2018.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So sometime on top of, since you started that journey. And what I liked about your bio is it's very easy to track. and very clear, like what your experience is and what you work with, you know. And so for you guys listening, Lori's website is in the comments. It's LoriRussell-Siemer.com.
Yes.
One of the things that jumped out at me, and we'll get into a bunch of stuff because there's a lot of really cool things I want to make sure I ask you about while I have you here tonight, but you had such a graceful way of just kind of stating like working with families around traumatic situations. And we talk about a lot of that on, I mean, obviously Breaking the Cycle, and we talk about a lot of that on this show, but I'm curious just kind of what that journey's been like, kind of walking with families and that and helping them find peace and healing, and what that maybe has meant for you and your career.
Sure. I feel like that's like quite an extensive question.
It
right?
is.
Yeah.
So you take whatever piece of that you want and we can just roll with it.
Yeah, no problem. So I feel like my experience at Child Protective Services really gave me a good foundation for crisis intervention, family dynamics, how trauma impacts children, you know, because usually children end up in care due to parental behavior, right, of some sort. And then I ended up writing home studies, and I just could see different dynamics playing out. I have a really high level of integrity, sometimes to a fault. And so, you know, I just kind of pick up pieces where I go, and then when something isn't serving me anymore, I kind of move into something else. So I wrote home studies for a little while. Yes.
For those who might not know, home studies are?
Yeah, so home studies are when children are removed from their biological families and they're placed usually with a relative, but also for prospective foster parents who are just going through the licensing process. I would go into the homes, meet with the families. There are many points of different inspections that you have to do in the household. You have to interview all of the parties separately and things like that. So I did that for a while, learned a lot also. Just kind of like reading people. There were a lot of times where I noticed, you know, the parents would say one thing, the kids would say something totally different. And so you learn to then read people's, you know, the tone of their voice and the inflection, facial expressions and things like that. So that's kind of what I picked up there. And then I went into supervision role with the same child placing agency. So I had writers under me who were writing, and then I would kind of look for any details that were missed or things that I had concerns about. Hey, I need you to ask the family about this, or hey, I think we can approve them, but maybe need to do some parenting classes or something like that. And then going into by that time too, I'm going through all kinds of personal growth and evolution. I'm on my own journey, you know, through this process. And in doing so, I learned a lot about who I am as a person and what I have to offer. And that took, you know, it's kind of scary putting yourself out there, especially like when you talk about spirituality, I think, because if you are not presenting in a box of some sort of faith or religion, oftentimes you get totally dismissed as like woo-woo. And so finding my strength and my power, I understood very clearly that my spiritual path is empowering other people. And so when I was building my practice, that was the entire intention behind it, is how do I empower people to make good choices for themselves, to overcome the depths and darkness of depression or addiction, forgive themselves for trauma they've caused other people. You know.
Yeah, the multitudes of recovery.
Yes.
I picked up on it when you were talking about it, just kind of sitting with you in this and hearing your experience. But you had stated, I kind of move into things and move out of things when they don't serve me.
Yes.
I thought that was such a beautiful way to kind of name the growth process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the definition of adaptability, right? As soon as something is no longer like in resonance, then we have to shift and change and evolve and grow and move into something that is in resonance.
Yeah, resonance. How would you describe resonance to me?
To me, I would say it's a feeling and a sensation. It's kind of indescribable, but it just feels right. I would say, like in your heart center, it feels like it speaks safety to your body. You feel safe and secure, and you feel like, oh, okay, like I can do this. It's like the opposite of panic or resistance or digging in.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And it's interesting too. Like you mentioned, I think a really important piece that I'm sure a lot of people listening have experienced too is like when we step into our spiritual journey, especially like in any type of healing sense, people have a lot of opinions about that.
They do.
And I always try to remind, especially on this show, because we have people from all different backgrounds and beliefs and experiences, is like the most important thing is that you have a connection that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it's all about.
Yes.
And I feel it from you. Like I'm hearing you talk about it, and it's like, this is what we're talking about like week to week when we have these topics. So it's just nice to have another person in here just embodying what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to take a moment too, because when I have access to somebody who has social work experience, but especially child protective services, some of my clients watch this show, and just like over the years too, like maybe they've been through situations like that or whatever the case may be. What would be your like public service announcement to like reassure them, to encourage them that even though kind of bad things, quote unquote, are happening, that your job was as a social worker, and a social worker's job is to come in and give the resources? Like, what would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I would really advise them to like hang in there and just understand that if you do the work, you're going to see results, you know, and that's a big important part, because sometimes, especially for the parents, I think it's really difficult. Sometimes parents feel like they're falsely accused of things, and so they get really resistant to doing any of the required work that they're being asked to do. And that's a really hard thing. You know, I've had to advocate myself for families where I knew it was an accident. Like I didn't have any proof. I wasn't there when it happened. But again, it's just that heart knowingness. And so, you know, when you get a really, I think, invested caseworker too, that's really helpful. And you can always go, you know, to supervision and try to get a new caseworker too if you know, are unhappy. I don't think they're probably not going to do that all of the time or anything like that, but I do think it's important that you're working with someone that you feel like you can work with.
Yeah, that you like and likes you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the state, you know, the code, the statute is reunification whenever possible. So that, you know, that is supposed to be the goal. At the same time, you have people who have been there for a long time. We work very, very long hours doing that job. I remember working 50 or 60-hour weeks. You don't get a lot of breaks. Like it's hard, it's stressful, and I can only imagine what it's like doing that type of work with a family. I was single and then got married, didn't have any children the time that I was doing it, and so it was different for me. I had a ton of energy. I was in my early 20s. Like I could do it all day and all night. I was just going and going and going.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I think it would be different now.
Yeah, yeah. I think back to my 20s too. Like there's some of the things I did in the field back then, like working in treatment centers,
Yes.
I will never do again.
Yes.
Ever. It was good to cut the teeth and get all the experience.
Yes.
I think I'd rather take a nap now.
Yes. I feel you on that, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned to me before as well, so you had been seeking some training and working with people with ART. I'm curious a little bit about that, kind of as we ramp up into some of the more fun topics. But ART, what is ART? How are you working with it? And
Yeah, so not to be confused with like art therapy. That's totally different. This is accelerated resolution therapy, and I like to tell my clients it's like EMDR on steroids. I know you've had you know, at least a handful of your therapists that you've interviewed have talked all about EMDR, and it's really great. ART is different in a few ways. It's the same in that you're using bilateral stimulation to connect both hemispheres of the brain in order to get like the digestion and integrative process going, because what happens when we get, you know, kind of in functional freeze mode in the brain, we don't digest and integrate our experiences as well. We don't sleep, which means we're not getting the REM sleep, which is needed to kind of process and digest all of the experiences that we're having. And so just like EMDR, ART, you only use eye movements. I know with EMDR there's other options for the bilateral stimulation. ART is solely eye movements.
So you may know I'm already going to ask, because I
Okay.
ask with all those who do EMDR, do you use the lights? Do you
No.
do the arm?
I do my hand.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless I'm working remote, I do have a remote EMDR platform that I use, which just has like two orbs that go back and forth for somebody
cool.
on the other end of the computer. Yeah. So with ART, another thing that differentiates it from EMDR is that you resolve an issue in a singular session. So it is recommended those sessions are a little bit longer. We usually start at about 90 minutes. Sometimes they go a little bit over that. So sometimes it's hard to get insurance to cover it because they don't want to cover that 30-minute add-on. But it is really important to work through the entirety of the issue, because once it's closed from beginning to end, a person really feels an enormous sense of relief. And so that is what's different. Another thing that's different is that with EMDR, there's a lot of like left brain thinking happening. Even in between the eye movement sets or the bilateral sets, people are talking about what they're noticing. With ART, we really try to keep them in the right hemisphere of the brain, so it's a lot more creative. We're using skills and tools like wordplay, and things like using metaphors and things like that, which I find really fun because it's very intuitive. It's very like in the moment.
Yeah.
You do have a script like EMDR, however, you go off script a lot, just coming up with, oh, I've got this weird sensation. It's like an elephant. Oh, elephant doesn't belong on your chest. Get that off.
Yeah.
Like, send it back to the zoo, And so it's like fun and playful, and gets them out of their head and into their body more. So you're really looking at body sensations a lot more than with EMDR. EMDR, we kind of do the body scan at the very end, the beginning and the end, whereas ART, you're consistently checking in with what is happening in your body right now.
I would imagine the benefit too in that over the course of a long session,
Yes.
they get to see those benchmarks as they go.
Yeah.
Which can be really helpful too.
Yeah, so what I've noticed as well is that they develop an innate body conscious that they have grown disconnected from, because when you have too many things kind of swirling around your mind, a lot of people are highly dissociative. Some people don't even recognize or realize how often they do dissociate. And so putting people in their body and having them become familiar with what are the sensations, where do I feel that, what is that emotion that's tied to that sensation that I feel in my gut right now, why are my palms sweating, why do I feel tingling in my feet and legs,
Making those connections are important. It's like which is why I've always appreciated talking with therapists over the years. It's just so honest. And there's something refreshing about that too. Like when we were checking in and before the show started and just kind of, here's my style, and you laid it out for me. And I very much appreciate that, just being on this side of it so that I know where to meet you, you know? And I think about that in the sense of like relational aspects in society. It's like there's a lot of people like two ships in the night, they're missing each other.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Communication is key.
It really is.
Yes.
It really is. For the viewers, because it's for me. Left brain concrete, right brain abstract.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So logical, linear, intangible, creative, artsy.
Yeah.
Except I did that backwards.
Yeah.
This is my left hand, my right hand.
It'll be inverted on the camera.
Okay,
It'll
perfect.
look right over there.
Okay. That's all that matters.
Yeah. And so you're into, in the area, a lot of cool different things. So you have your private practice. You mentioned that you coordinate with outside professionals and offer your services through, you were mentioning certain ketamine treatments and different type of alternative treatments that people could seek for trauma. And before I go on explaining, what are all kind of some of those aspects so that people can get to know you if they're interested in finding you for some of these things? What are you into on those sides?
Sure. So I am definitely into ketamine-assisted psychotherapy. I offer that in my office. And for some people, depending on their situation too, I do refer some people out to clinic to actually get the IV dosage. It just kind of depends on the person's situation and what is going on with them. I don't necessarily always feel comfortable working with people in office with ketamine. So sometimes I do refer out. I have a partnership with a corporation that I work with. They do the like the med check, like a psychiatric appointment, basically. They handle the prescribing. They actually send it to the client, and then the client brings it into my office, and I sit with them. I also work on setting intentions and then doing the integration work afterwards. And in addition to the CAP, I offer PAP, which is psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. So I was trained in all kinds of psychedelics when I went to California to do my training for that. And so oftentimes I have clients who will go out of state to do things like psilocybin or ayahuasca, and then when they come back, oftentimes with those type of like plant medicine, it's very different than it's just a very different, even different psychoactive components, right, than something created in a lab. And so oftentimes what I'm seeing, people who are drawn to do plant medicine wind up having really big spiritual, very powerful kind of experiences, and then they don't know who they are anymore, and they don't know what that means for reintegrating back into their relationship with their partners, who they are as a parent. How do I work now in this situation where all of these people see the world one way, and now my mind has been completely blown open and I see things completely differently. And so I just help them kind of understand their journey, the visuals, how their perceptions changed, how they can draw forth, like I call it like ongoing medicine, not just the plant medicine, but the takeaway from that. What is the, like their juice, their medicine that they then carry to the work that they're doing, or who they are as a partner in their marriage, or who they are as a parent to their children.
Yeah. You know, this is interesting too, because so I work with 12-steppers, and so this is the safe way, right? Like when I have clients even who are 12-steppers, like this would be the type of professional that I would want them talking to about this kind of stuff,
Right.
if they were ever going to go this route. The way Lori is talking about these things, the way she's working with it, the way she refers to other professionals too, and has all of that accountability set up. If you're out there thinking about this stuff, I'm glad you're checking in tonight, because Lori's got a lot of valuable information on this, and this is the safe way to talk about it. You
Right.
know?
Yeah. And so what I'm talking about too is clinical psychedelic work. This
Yeah.
is not recreational. There's a big difference. This is not taking psilocybin and going camping with your friends. This is like going to a clinic in a state where it's legal, having a sitter. The sitter then usually, like I have a partnership with some of the clinics there, the sitter then will refer for the ongoing work back to me. So the person is with a therapist throughout the entirety of their journey, both before, for prepping. There's a lot of prep that goes in. Like it's best, you know, and creates the least amount of harm when you have an intention, you know what you're using, what your purpose is with the medicine, whether it plant or synthetic. Very important.
Yeah. Because I imagine, I don't even work with this stuff, and I know people come in and will sensationalize these types of things. And you know, me with my background, I always, you know, keeping my countertransference out of the room, I always try to, you know, well, I'm going to refer to someone who does know what they're talking about here, because if you just asked me, you know, I probably wouldn't, you know, do it, you know, blah, 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 blah. So having someone who knows the inner workings of it, how would you help a client to not sensationalize the ketamine and psychedelics? Like, how would you help ground them in the benefits of it?
Yeah, I think I would have an in-depth discussion about like kind of where that's coming from, like the sensationalizing, if that's a word. You know what I mean? Where did they hear that? Like, where are they getting their information from? And then saying, okay, well, here's what, you know, the research says, and here's some information that I can provide you with, and it will kind of like help you understand that it can be dangerous. You know, we're not to use them like, I mean, people do use them willy-nilly, but then they have willy-nilly experiences too. You know?
It's a perfect way to put it. It's like, I think about a lot of times, especially like with the effectiveness of ketamine when done right, kind of like Xanax. It's like Xanax is very, very helpful for a lot of things, and it also created another 12-step program.
Yes.
Right? This willy-nilly nature on the other side of it, it's just like, this is how you approach it if
Yeah.
you want to be balanced.
Right, and I'll tell you a story because this is really interesting. Yes, even some of the clinics are not doing the psychotherapeutic component. So one time I was actually doing like a cacao ceremony for a group of women, and somebody asked me about ketamine. You know a little bit about ketamine, so I was talking about ketamine, and one of the people there was like, well, I don't understand what the big deal is. I've done 6 sessions and like nothing, I haven't noticed anything. And I'm like, whoa, wait, where are you doing it? And she told me, so she was going to a clinic getting high dose, which is through IV. And she said they put on a baking show on Netflix while she's in her ketamine treatment. And I was like, okay, well, that's not ketamine therapy. Like, you're just using ketamine. Like,
yeah, God bless. Those shows can be therapeutic, but not in that way.
Right, exactly. So I, just talked to the group about how the importance of setting an intention, knowing what you're going in, and then the internal focus. You wear an eye mask. They have specialized music that, assists you on your journey. It starts out very slow while you're kind of disconnecting from your body, because ketamine does have a dissociative effect, so you kind of can feel really floaty. And in doing so, and then it gets like, reaches a crescendo, the music changes, and all of a sudden you're in a different visual, and then you're over here, and but if you're with a sitter who can remind you, okay, like, especially if you're having a hard time, or I'm not really connecting anything, I don't know where I am, your sitter can remind you of what your intention for being there is, and hey, can you find this part of yourself, this younger part of yourself that you want to nourish or nurture? Where is he or where is she?
It's fascinating stuff. I mean, just having no experience in those rooms, I mean, it just this isn't so off from just what we would do without it. It just sounds like these things help accelerate it when done right.
Correct.
Yeah,
I would say that for sure. I mean, and it's really good. Like, ketamine is okay. Ketamine treatment, ketamine assisted psychotherapy is very beneficial for people who are in acute crisis. People who are suicidal ideation with intent, can be very, very helpful. Crisis kind of people,
Yeah, because it's funny what a blend as you and I are exploring this and kicking it around, because like when I work with a 12-stepper, that's kind of like when we talk about the spiritual experience of like when they carry the message and they kind of have that conscious shift. It's like they oftentimes will explain that process of like, it's a little bit ethereal, right? I couldn't really tell you what happened. It was just like a shift of awareness.
Yeah.
And I could just imagine someone who's like in acute crisis who can't and doesn't have the time to get there.
Yes.
To help ground them there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I worked with somebody at one point who wanted to do EMDR and wasn't stable enough to even do that, and had no hope. Like, that was the signature. Like, absolutely no hope. What's the point in this life? There is no point. We're all just going to die. There's nothing after. Lights out. So no, like, just absolutely hopeless. One ketamine treatment in clinic with the therapy component, complete and total shift and turnaround. Had hope for the first time, was actually thinking about helping other family members, which is huge. You know how big that is, because oftentimes people are so focused on what's going on inside, they don't have the energy or the wherewithal to even consider being able to assist somebody else. And that came instantaneously. So, yeah.
It's powerful.
Yes. But again, not for everyone.
Yeah, no, and I like that you, from the jump, like when you were explaining it to me before, and then as we're getting into it now, that's been your disclaimer from the jump, and that's why I have a lot of respect for it. It's like, because I've come across, I'm from California, just moved here in October. I'm sure you could imagine there are clinics out there who not only are they not doing it right, they're probably destroying people's lives. California is a wild place. It's like how Florida used to be like 15, 20 years ago, where everything got shut down. Yeah, it's wild. Glad to be in Texas. But yeah, it was always interesting to see like the clinicians that want to do it ethically, and they were being kind of pushed out. And so to see that, this is still very much an effective treatment, where if you're interested in it, we've got Lori's website again. We'll plug it again. It's in the comments. This is a clinician where you could trust. She's doing ethical work, and if you had questions about it, she could help you sort it out. Because there are centers where they're just going to put on a baking show, and it's like, this is where they're just taking your money.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not really getting any therapeutic benefit from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you get an intake for that, is it a lot of crisis that you're kind of like initially sifting through, or do you find?
Not generally. I think sometimes, I don't know, usually I have people come in and do a diagnostic assessment, full-blown assessment first, because I need to make sure that I'm a good fit for them and that they're a good fit for me, right? We both have to feel safe with each other, especially in the vein of psychedelics. Because if I am sitting for you, like I am your person, while you are off, discovering all kinds of bits about yourself, I'm making sure that your body is safe. And so in doing so, I need to make sure that we are a good fit for each other. So that's the first step. And then if we determine that that is the right pathway, based on, certain criteria, if you have any history of psychosis, that's probably not going to be most beneficial for you. If you have really high blood pressure and it's uncontrolled, you're also not going to be a good fit for ketamine.
Do you turn over certain bipolar diagnosis too? Like probably not the best fit, or do you work with that as well?
Bipolar, it depends. If it's without psychosis, it might be a good fit. If it's with psychosis, it's not going to be a good fit.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Speaking of things that float out there and get explored, I had a question and then it slipped away and I just grabbed it to bring it back.
Yes.
In this process, when you're working with people, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but like, do you find for you, and even people you work with, that like they go through this and they kind of have an experience of like, it's hard not to believe in something bigger than me spiritually?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the person I was talking about who like had a belief, like was so deeply depressed, didn't believe there was anything after lights out, the ketamine treatments actually helped the person turn around. And I mean, not necessarily like, not on some rigorous religious or spiritual path, but now, is open to, wow, maybe there is more to life than me holding up in my house and, protecting myself from everyone and everything and all the suffering in the world and everything. You know what I mean? Like, almost like it just creates a space for you to come out of your shell. And when you're out of your shell and you're interacting in the world and you're noticing nature and all the colors and the geometry and the symbolism and all of the things, you have hope. Hope is so powerful.
That's the commodity. People think it's money. The real commodity in life is hope.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you'll go out and create things and make money easy when you just have a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I was listening to this thing the other day, and this might slip out of my mind again. I don't. My brain is all over the place because I'm thinking about so much of what you're sharing, and I want to ask you so many questions while I have you. But it's when we're held up like that, kind of pulled away from the world. You mentioned something earlier about dissociative, being dissociative, and how much people don't realize how often they're doing that. And I was just kind of hearing this thing the other day of like how often we walk out the door, we go to the store, we go to work, we interact with people, and we didn't look at a single tree, we didn't notice a single pet, a single animal.
Yes.
It's like guilty. I've been there in my life too, but it's like, what a wonderful thing that like this work allows us to walk with people discovering those things.
Yes.
And it's like, I don't know about you, but like sometimes I'll have a client come in like, oh man, I saw this wonderful tree, and we like celebrate it.
Yes.
Like it's like, yeah, that was an awesome tree, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't even see it. Sounds great.
Yeah. Same. Yes, I love that. And I feel like it's so important. So a big part of my practice too is helping people develop mindfulness. So I do the DES2, which is the dissociative scale, with all of my clients as part of the diagnostic assessment, because it's important to know, especially if you're doing any kind of eye movement work, to what degree a person is dissociating.
Do they do that with you weekly, like session to session, or is that more of like a longer winded assessment you do?
Oh
or?
no, that can happen in a singular session. It's
Okay.
like a 25 question. Basically, you're reading a little vignette and then asking what percentage of time does this happen to you, and then they rate it on a 0 to 100% in increments of 10. 100% would mean it happens every day. 0%, that's never happened to me, and it's only during times of sobriety, but throughout your entire life. You know, because the one time you forgot how you got in someone else's house doesn't count. If you were high or something,
Yeah,
you know.
that's out there.
That don't count those times. I tell people, like, if, you know, one time you tried mushrooms and did this, like, that doesn't count. It's only in times of sobriety. But yeah, people don't realize too, dissociation occurs on kind of a continuum. So on one end of the spectrum, you have like what I would ascribe as like a Buddhist monk who can be in the present moment of now, chanting and, you know, just totally aware that he's so much more than his body or she. And then the other end of the spectrum, usually somebody with such severe trauma that their ego has fragmented off into different personas. Those personas develop their own tastes, likes, dislikes, and then you have dissociative identity disorder. But most of us are somewhere in the middle. You know, we are driving down the freeway and just daydreaming, and then suddenly realize, oh, I missed my exit. I've got to turn around now.
Right.
You know, or somebody's talking to you, and then you're waiting for a response, and they're like, huh, wait, what'd you say?
Yeah.
You know,
what's going on?
I have no idea what you just said, because I'm thinking about my to-do list or something else, you know. That used to happen to me a lot. Like when I was in Shavasana in a yoga class, I would just, like, my mind would be going wild, and it's like, this is my rest time. What is, you know, happening here?
Yeah.
And that's when I kind of discovered mindfulness through somatic practice, tantra, yoga,
And
things
you're
like that.
trained in the yoga side of things as well, too. I don't even want to butcher the term that they use for it. You just said it. I heard it, and I'm not even going to try to say it, but you've done a lot of this.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of it personally. Like, I don't have a certification as a yoga instructor or anything like that, but I do have a lot of yoga resources that I will send to people. Like, there's an entire Kundalini yoga practice. In Kundalini yoga, you call a practice a kriya. There's an entire kriya about getting the body out of distress. So it's like a perfect remedy for seasonal affective disorder or something like that, if you just cannot get your body out of distress. And it's basically like you're tapping on pressure points. So it's a lot of like acupressure kind of Eastern type work,
Chakras
but you're
and
moving
things like
energy. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had a friend years ago when I was first in the field, and she was very much into it, and she would teach us about our chakras and stuff, and I'd be like, man, this is cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like the colors.
Yeah.
It got me
They're
hooked. I was
beautiful.
interested in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But when they would do those groups, clients at the centers we worked at, they would like beg to have those groups. It was very helpful.
Yeah.
Because it's just grounding. I think any type of yoga, you know, we can go down the route of like how helpful physical exercise is, but yoga to like stretch yourself out and to get into a mindful place and
Yes.
to really get out of here,
Yes.
it's definitely very effective.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like my yoga practice has evolved and adapted over time. You know, I started out with like hot vinyasa flow, where it was like, you know, I was very much in this yang time of my life where I'm like, work hard, success, you know. And then it was like, ugh, this is too much. Like, this is hard. I'm exhausted. Like, I don't want to go do more work for yoga, you know. And then I completely flipped and went into yin, and that's just stretching. And that's a mental practice, because you're getting into the deep tissue and the fascia of the body. Sometimes you'll cry because you'll release something that you didn't even know you had in your hips or something like that. But anyway, now, like, fast forward into the future, now I've kind of like honed into Kundalini. And what I love about Kundalini is like it's a 3-point practice. So you're doing body movement, you're engaging your breath. So it's very rhythmic, pattern, repetitive, predictable. We know that that speaks safety to the body, and you're using mantra. So your mind cannot wander to something else. It is solely focused in the now, in my breath, in the mantra, in the body movement.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's helpful on so many levels. I was just talking with a client about their panic attacks and using mantras to stay in this moment,
Yes.
right? And it's just, I think to bring that into yoga and like, I went to treatment years ago and we were doing yoga and I had heard this from friends and other therapists, like there are just some areas where when you stretch it out and you release something, you could just start crying.
Yes.
Like if you've never had hot tears, you know, that's a different experience.
Yes.
Yeah. But it's powerful stuff. It's just, if you haven't tried it, you know, take our word for it, give it a shot. It's fun. I prefer the slow movements. I'll hurt myself these days, but yeah.
Yeah, and I love that there's something for everyone.
Yeah.
Wherever you are, you can be beginner, you could be advanced, you could be anywhere in between, you know, but try a bunch of different things too. Like not just you, but the audience, because something might not be a good fit, but another style might.
Yeah, it's a good call out. Yeah. What would you suggest for a 6'5", out of shape gentleman?
Maybe Hatha.
Yeah.
Just kind of slow warrior, you know, channeling, harnessing all that energy. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. So on average, I'm not even going to ask it like that. When a client reaches out to work with you, would you say that something they could anticipate as part of joining you and getting to know you and building trust with you is that spiritual process?
Yeah, definitely. I usually ask about that during the diagnostic assessment. Like, do you have any religious affiliation? If you do, tell me about that. Tell me about your spiritual practice. Like, are you active? Do you have a practice? You know, what does that look like for you? And then just a lot of questions. A lot of times, like when people are doing bilateral stimulation, so whether it be EMDR or ART, a lot of times they will just have a spontaneous realization, and it's like, okay, we're clearing the clutter out of the mind, which gives them that open channel, that pathway to their heart, which then enables that activation of, like, you know, in IFS we call that the capital S self, the higher self, that part of you that knows exactly what you need in any given moment, but most of the time is too clouded by all of this unprocessed material floating around in your brain.
Yeah. Internal family systems.
Yes.
Yeah. Aren't those the individuals who did consulting on Inside Out, those movies?
Yes, exactly.
We were talking about that in one of the other episodes. Those are funny movies. We don't need to go too much into that, but how long have you been doing kind of IFS work? So
I'm not trained or certified in IFS, so disclaimer. So what I do is ego parts work, which any therapist can do. And so we just talk about the different parts, and a lot of times, again, like especially with ART, parts will spontaneously emerge, and so we want to nurture and take care of those parts so that they can integrate. Sometimes we have a conversation about it. Usually it's after the session. How I set up my ART sessions is we do one 90-minute like ART. You're doing the eye movements, you're processing through from beginning to end your target. And then the next session we do an integration, and then set the intention for the next session. Gotcha. So during that integration, we'll talk about, okay, because sometimes people who aren't familiar with IFS or ego parts, they will say, well, I don't know why, but like it's like this little kid in me just like wants to scream. Yeah. And is that weird? You know, and they'll want some reassurance, like, no, that is not weird. There's a part of you that needs to voice something that never had an opportunity. Here's your opportunity. Yeah. So, you know, and that's when we use like the megaphone tool to have a megaphone and just scream whatever needs to be said. Do you have one of those in your office? No. Oh man, I totally would. I totally would. Yes. I miss those from childhood where they're like war, 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 war. Yes. Yeah, those are cool. Yes. I like the progression of it. You know, I always, as I'm getting to know clinicians and hearing their perspectives, I always try as I'm asking the questions to kind of put myself just kind of in the experience. What might this be like if I were sitting in that room, and just the way you're describing it, the progression of it, I can track with it. It makes sense. I could see myself doing work within that structure. And so, you know, it's just nice to have yet again another person on here who can just offer beneficial services to those who are listening. And yeah, and I feel like the integration is so important, because so many times, like especially when people get really like excited about self-help, and so they'll read a bunch of things and they're, you know, taking it all in and they're consuming, but that if they don't allow the time to actually digest and integrate the material, they don't really maintain the knowledge, or the knowledge doesn't convert to wisdom. You know, whereas if you you know, have an epiphany in a session, like, okay, well, let's talk about that. Like, what did you notice after the session? How was it like going home? Like, what did you notice for the rest of the day? Did you have a dream that night? What did you dream about? You know, and then getting into some of the analysis, some of the symbolism will come up that very night and be very clear, but something that they didn't recognize before. You know, and then it's like, oh, whoa.
Yeah.
You know?
Light
Yes.
bulb. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember being an early clinician of like, I wonder how that works, you know, those light bulb moments. And I think you just highlighted it so brilliantly of like, this is how it works. This is why we bring a therapist into the journey, so that they can shine the light on these moments and help us slow that down.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just starting to become aware, you know, through the process, they become aware of what it feels like for their body to be in distress, what it feels like for their body to feel safe. What is the difference? You know, and then they learn too, I want more of that safety. I want more of the rest and digest. I want more of the parasympathetic. I want more of the meditative quality of moving through my life and knowing that I'm going to experience highs and lows and ebbs and flows. But if my window of tolerance, you know, is expanded, then I can handle a lot more than somebody who, you know, is stuck in the FFFF.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How would you, the FFFF?
Yes.
That
Fight,
was
flight, freeze, fawn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. That was good. You were mentioning too just a moment ago of like along the lines of integration, they get their hands on all these books, they read all this information. I'm going to lean into that for a split second. Is there, let's say somebody wants to go down this road, is there a book that you really personally as a clinician enjoy and think like it's approachable, safe, that maybe would be beneficial if they liked what you're talking about, that maybe they could pick up?
Sure. There's so many. I mean, I am like a walking library. I love to read. And so oh my gosh, I don't know where to start, but I would say like probably my most recommended book to clients, especially clients who are interested in EMDR, I would recommend Getting Past Your Past by Francine Shapiro. She like goes through the process extensively from beginning to end, talks about all the resourcing and the tools that we use in session as well. And so I find it's a really great primer for people, you know, especially people who are very like analytical or leaning into over analytical. Sometimes they're like, well, I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense to me. I'm just moving my eyes. And when they read that book, it's like a perfect primer. Like they already know what to expect. They already know how it works. All the science is in there, you know. And then I can just go right into my intuitive right brain stuff and don't have to deal with, you know, like manage all of that. So I like that. I would say probably the book that I most recommend to clients just to open them to like how wackadoodle the mind can be is The Untethered Soul.
Oh yeah, is that the one with the horse on the front?
Yes.
It's a blue book.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yes.
It's a good one.
And I love the metaphor that he gives, like near the very beginning. I think it's Michael Singer is the author.
Yeah.
And he talks about how an uncontrolled mind is like an unruly roommate who speaks incessantly and comments on every single thing, stream of consciousness. So imagine every single thought you have is spoken out loud. No one would tolerate a person like that living and sharing a space with them, right? You would say, get out of here. But yet we allow that to occur in our mind nearly constantly.
Yeah.
And that is a cause of suffering for many, many, many people.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of my favorite lines from, like, if I had to ever choose a favorite book, would be The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck.
Yes.
And the first line, life is suffering.
Yes.
You know, and with that quote from The Untethered Soul, it's like, yes, that would be suffering. And we do suffer in that way.
Yeah.
So thank goodness we have this kind of work to turn to.
Yes. And I tell people too, like metaphorically speaking, you know, when we experience like a traumatic event or a series of traumatic events, because sometimes we haven't processed the first one and then we're slammed with like 2 or 3 other things, or high levels of stress prevent us from really fully digesting. in integrating an experience that we've had, it's kind of like, imagine this room is filled from floor to ceiling with filing cabinets. They all have drawers. Every single one of them has folders, and every single paper filed away in the folder represents one singular memory or moment in time in your lifetime. And the trauma is like a whirlwind that comes in and just messes it all up, and now there's stuff everywhere. And your brain takes one look at that and it's like so overwhelming. Where do I start? Oh, I don't, so I'm just going to shut the door. But then you still have that mental clutter constantly, and so it's really hard to be present, to be an active listener, to be able to communicate what you're actually feeling, to know what you're feeling in your body,
Yeah. Important social and professional, tasks, that are going to present themselves to you every day.
Yes.
Listening, responding kindly.
Yes.
Being succinct, all important things.
Yeah. And I feel like, too, that really helps us create a subject-object relationship, especially for all of the empathic people out there. I know a lot of times people who are highly empathic have difficulty not feeling and sensing everything that's happening in a room. And so a lot of my clients are empaths, and so we do a lot of work around grounding and spiritual protection, and how do you notice what is mine versus what is the other person, and how do you remind yourself, like, wait a minute, whose business am I in? I've got this feeling in my stomach and I don't really have anything to be nervous about, but my daughter does. She's going in for a job interview this afternoon. You know what I'm saying? And so we can say, wait a minute, is this my business to be in? Is it, whose business am I in right now?
Staying away from the hot stove. It already burned me once.
Yes. Yes.
From social work to spiritual work to working with professionals in the area, I mean, you've done a lot, and it's been just wonderful to hear your experience and expertise. Is there any last just kind of tidbit or experience you would share with the viewers before I ask you our signature questions here tonight?
I feel like that's a doozy of a question, and I think what I want to say to people is that we all have a spark of light inside of us, and it's our responsibility as humans to grow and nourish and nurture that. And sometimes it's really hard. Like, it can be really hard, and it can feel very isolating, but everybody's going through it. Like, we're all human. Everybody has their stuff, their baggage, their generational trauma, and so I think I just want to encourage everybody, no matter where you are in your journey, to just keep going.
Yeah, just keep going.
Yes. One foot in front of the other. And the other thing is, too, just digestible bits. Like, you don't have to bite off more than you can handle ever.
Yeah.
Just take a little bit and work with that.
Just a little better today.
Yes.
If you were going to build, Lori, a mental health amusement park, what would be the first ride that you built and why?
I think it would probably have something to do with sound, like some sort of immersive experience, but where you're wearing headphones, so like you get some sort of bilateral stimulation. I'm not sure exactly where you would go with that. Like, maybe it would just be, I don't know. Oh, it would be really cool if they could do like a shamanic journey, like a guided visual imagery while you're listening to bilateral stimulation, and you have a chair that kind of like moves in different directions,
Interesting. Would that be on a track, or would they?
No, I think it's like stationary in a room.
Oh, okay.
That's what I see.
Yeah, kind of like an amphitheater kind of style?
Yeah.
What would you call it?
I have no idea. The BLS boombox.
The BLS boombox? Okay. Noted.
Yes.
Who was your favorite childhood cartoon?
Ooh, childhood cartoon. I would say, the one that comes to mind right now is Rainbow Bright, and I think it's because she was so spunky and cool, and she just like did her own thing. And now reflecting back, it's like that is me. Like, I've taken a rather unconventional path in most of the things that I have chosen to do, both professionally and personally. And so I think that's a big part of my astrological thing too is just becoming very comfortable in who I am and what I have to offer. I'm not going to be for everybody, but I will
Yeah.
be for the people who are in resonance with what I have to offer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
How would Rainbow Bright benefit from seeing you for therapy?
Ooh, we could have so much fun. We'd probably do a ton of dream analysis, and there'd be a lot of color coming through, I think, like rainbows. And I imagine we could do a pretty awesome cacao guided ceremony, you know,
Yeah.
where it's like, okay, we're totally opening our hearts and kind of exploring, I don't know, something fantastic, something whimsical.
There you go.
I don't know what. Yeah.
That does sound fun.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And
Thank
Gabe,
you.
huge shout out. Gabe is back, our producer,
Yes,
man.
I am.
It is good to see you,
Yes.
brother.
Thank
Nice
you,
to
thank
meet
you. Nice to meet you as well. It was great listening to your story.
Thank you.
Yeah, as always, man, thank you for all the help you do to make this look beautiful, and just glad to see you back.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lori Russell-Siemer. If you're interested in her information, it's in the comments section. It'll be in all of the descriptions wherever you see this posted. We break the cycle together. We are here every Friday, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. We love you. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.